Hey, what's going on, guys? It's the Crypto Siege with another day in the life and the crazy life that is the digital asset space. Good morning. Happy 4th to you. Hope you and your family are well and you're safe. Hope you have some time to enjoy one another and celebrate this day. Hope you guys have a great time doing that. And so, me and Miss Crypto Siege, we're going to hang out and pop some Moet and hang out. The little one is hanging out as teenagers do, so she's over at her friend's house, and they're going to kind of do their thing. But so I wanted to bring a couple of things, share a couple of things with you guys today, and maybe we'll hop on for a little bit of a live later on today, just to say hey, hang out with the family a little bit. But I got a couple of stories. Certainly want to cover the new amendment to the proposal from the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We're going to cover that as well. And it's really, really important to note kind of the dates of the original, which was in May, and the new amendment that actually came out in June, which most important about that article, if you will, or that report from the Bureau is that Ripple and its asset XRP is mentioned in that. So we're going to cover that as well. But I just really, really important to share this with you guys. All right, guys. So listen, and we're going to talk about who was it? Chris Larsen. I think it's very, very important to know his background from which he comes, because I think what Ripple is looking to do in the SME market with providing working capital to SMEs is going to be a significant game changer in their model and their overall business model. All right, guys. So listen, this is your XRP Ripple daily news in around 0 to 10 minutes. Shout out to James Rule XRP for sharing this on Twitter. Guys doing his thing, always adding value to the community, and I certainly appreciate all of his efforts. So this is from Santander, right? Santander, innoventures.com is where you can find this article. Ripple builds a global business through capital and partnerships. It's a really, really good, interesting read here. I'm going to cover some of it. Here's the PDF here. This is Ripple, serial fintech entrepreneur. And interesting to note that the Santander Ripple partner is covering this. So Chris Larsen shares the key lesson he has learned building eLoan and Prosper, and now Ripple. A lot of guys, I know it's a lot of new people to the community. Perhaps you didn't know that that's Chris Larsen's background. Started out with eLoan and then Prosper, and I believe he sold both of those. And those were, working capital peer-to-peer type platforms. And so let's do a little first, the corporate profile all the way to the left. Ripple provides global financial settlement solutions to ultimately enable the world to exchange value like it already exchanges information, giving rise to an internet of value. Ripple's solutions aim to lower the total cost of settlement by enabling banks, FIs, to transact directly with real-time certainty of settlement. And that's from the Ripple.com site. So a record of success for Chris Larsen. Every investor is reassured by a founder with a track record of success, and Chris Larsen brings a strong CV he brings a strong CV than most to the chief executive role at Ripple. Larsen founded eLoan, the online mortgage processor that was amongst the first to offer financial products over the internet. That success was followed by another with Prosper, the pioneering peer-to-peer lending business. So eLoan was for the mortgages, Prosper peer-to-peer. Prosper is still around today, but it's not run by Chris Larsen. Larsen's first businesses, eLoan and Prosper, each took a consumer's perspective. Each exposed different inefficiencies in the financial landscape that resulted in high costs and poor experiences for certain segments of consumers. In his latest venture, Larsen has turned his eye to improving the core infrastructure of the financial services industry itself. My first businesses were at the top of the financial services stack, whereas Ripple operates at the very bottom, explained Larsen. Ripple operates down in the plumbing of financial transactions. It's an area that consumers would never consider, but improving it has the potential to change the cost and quality of the financial services they purchase. Today, Ripple enables banks to settle cross-border currency transactions instantly with complete visibility and certainty. Remember that phrase, guys, complete visibility and certainty, as we covered the report or the document from the CFPB. This results in lower transaction settlements costs to the banks, lower transaction settlement costs to the banks and their customers. This approach means Ripple is essentially an enterprise business-to-business company serving the financial services industry, not another business-to-consumer operation like eLoan and Prosper. As Ripple's products have matured, it increasingly partners with banks and other financial institutions, FIs, in order to build its technology into the core processes of the industry. Again, this is from Santander, Ventures. In a word of advice for fellow startups and entrepreneur, Larsen emphasizes, don't underestimate, goodness gracious, how closely you will be working with your venture capital partners. So there's another significant difference. Providing B2C financial products to consumers meant eLoan and Prosper were confined by their local markets, products, and regulations. But as a technology provider, Ripple is able to leap straight to becoming a truly global player. Global growth is the next phase in Ripple's commercial strategy, one which requires both capital and the right partnerships in order to succeed. Larsen's first business, eLoan, was a child of the dot-com era. As a first-generation internet entrepreneur, he brings an informed perspective to the buzz that surrounds financial technology today. During the lifespan of these businesses, he has also raised numerous rounds of venture capital. With that first business, we were very focused upon simply raising cash. Now I better understand the value of partnerships, strategic investors, those with more than a simple financial contribution to make, can really add value to a startup, accelerating growth and quickly multiplying the value of the businesses, guys. And you know, we say this on the channel all the time. Tell me about the tech. Tell me about the digital asset and the fintech company behind that asset that are in the same level, if you will, of a Chris Larsen, a Brad Garlinghouse, a brilliant mind like Joel Katz, David Schwartz, Mr. Yoshitaka Kitao. Tell me, share with me in the comments, who has that? It's a very, it's a major advantage for us as XRP hodlers, without question. And do not sleep on the fact that they have said, Ripple, Brad Garling tells time and time again, they are committed to the success of XRP. Committed to the success of XRP. And certainly we all know that Kitao-san is 10,000% committed to that success. So, in a word of advice for fellow startups and entrepreneurs, Larsen emphasizes, don't underestimate how closely you will be working with your venture capital partners. Remember, you're going to be sitting alongside these people for the next 5 years. Personal chemistry and a shared vision are the factors that should hold you together, not simply financial obligations. In Ripple's most recent funding round, Santander Ventures, the corporate venture capital fund of Santander Group, invested in the business. It was fantastic to have Santander participating, says Larsen. They have a great reputation for innovating to serve their customers, a vision that clearly comes from the very top of the business and is passed right down into the group's many businesses around the world. So the conversation between Ripple and Santander started at a time when many banks were skeptical, if not indifferent, toward distributed ledger technology. Many misconceptions surrounded the topic. Santander, however, proved more open to innovation. We quickly found many common reference points, says Larsen. So they're not only in Ripple, that they invested in Ripple. We shared a desire to dig down deep into the operations and processes of the financial markets to find ways of removing friction that has been built into processes over many years. Like us, they have an appetite to affect change, not just talk about it. The arrival of the internet didn't fundamentally change finance like it did other industries, music and retail being the most obvious examples. However, Larsen believes distributed ledger technology will cause that type of transformational shift. That's why we want to work with banks like Santander that really understand the implications and see the potential. Really great right up here. Really, really good article. And again, I believe it's important to understand who are the people at the top, who are the people that are making this thing go. And so we're talking massive success from the chairman of Ripple and Chris Larsen. Massive success, and has a keen eye, if you will, for recognizing inefficiencies in a particular space and putting together some technology, if you will. Getting involved in places that can make significant impact. And we all know the phrase now is the internet of value. And so, yeah, really, really good right up here, guys. So let's cover a little bit about the CFPB article, just a little bit. Let's see. So there it is here, right? So I think I should really cover let me go over this real quick with Galvatron. He's kind of going back and forth with the Winklevoss twins. XRP is a security. Yeah, I don't think so. Do you really think the federal CFPB will promote XRP for payments if there was even a hint of uncertainty to its designation? XRP is not a security. If it ever was, it is no longer. So they're pointing again, this particular document from the Federal Reserve, from the CFPB. Now there's two. One came out in May, okay? One of the original date was May. And this is an amendment that came out in June, okay? This is the amendment that came out in June. So, and Leonidas reminds us of this very fact here. Shout out to Leonidas and XRParcade.com. They don't need an introduction, but boy, you want to talk about leveling up your XRP IQ and your Ripple IQ, make sure you check out Leonidas at XRParcade.com. You'll get some great insight there. Okay, he's talking about the article that came out just the other day, which is kind of silly. I'm thinking, what? So there is an article claiming XRP has been approved by the US. It's just a clickbait article. This tweet by Stu Alderati captures the gist of the CFPB rule. And here's from Stuart Alderati at Ripple. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau believes that Ripple's products could allow banks and credit unions to know the exact final amount that recipients of remittances will receive before they are sent. And so do we. Again, this is in May. Okay. And so the new thing now that is going out is the amendment. So they put something out, and they would get, allowing for comments, and, different banks and different financial institutions, SMEs, SMBs, MTOs would comment on the new proposals. So the first thing came out in May, and this is an amendment to those, to the first one in May. This came out in June. And so a lot of people are seeing it, but they got an effective date for all the kind of the rule changes and the things that they suggested. It is the effective date is July 21st of 2020. Now, listen, that's cool. Let me show you some of the things that kind of mention XRP. And then I'm going to cover what I think is even more important than this coming out in June, and even more important than the July 21st date. So the Bureau has continued to monitor. This is from the June 15, 2020, right? The amendments that they put together. The Bureau has continued, same thing. This was in the May writing as well. but they continue to have it in this June one. So it's important to note that. The Bureau has continued to monitor the remittance transfer market since the publication of the assessment report and observes that most of these developments continue to progress. Examples include the continued growth and expanding functionality of the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, their global payment innovation, so SWIFT's GPI. Tracking product, which can increase the amount of upfront information available to sending institutions, and the expansion of the major payment card network's capacity to support cross-border payments. And that's cool. GPI, it's still not as significant as X current, but they did improve, right? It's still not as good as that current, but it did improve. It is also important to note that recently, shout out to Crypto Eddie from sharing with a guy like this from Swift out, I believe in India, stating that they were going to become agnostic to virtual currencies. So they're going to be completely agnostic. So they will take on anything that will work on their system. So that's very, very cool. I do think it's important, just like Crypto Eddie, to note that they did say virtual. He did say virtual currency. So I think that's important to note as well. So, and the expansion of major payment card networks' capacity to support cross-border payments. The continued growth of fintech, non-bank remittance transfer providers, and their further expansion into partnerships and other relationships with banks and credit unions, which allows such entities to tap into the closed network payment systems that non-bank remittance transfers providers have developed. And the continued growth and expanding partnership of virtual currency companies. And again, Swift mentioning virtual currency, becoming virtual currency agnostic, right? So he just mentioned that just a few days ago when he was on a Zoom, and Crypto Eddie covered that, right? So, and the continued growth and expanding partnership of virtual currency companies such as Ripple, which offers both a payments messaging platform to support cross-border money transfers as well as a virtual currency. When it states the currency is XRP, which can be used to effect settlement of those transfers. Again, very, very important to note in both the May document and the June document, June 5th document, Ripple and XRP are mentioned there, right? So they added, they adjusted it, they just changed some stuff, right? But they continue to mention Ripple in the June edition, and also pointing out the effective date of the changes. So this is from, again, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Remember that, because I'm going to point out, I'm going to bring it home with the executive order that the President of the United States signed and put into action. Okay, so very, very important to note that here. So here's another thing from the June thing as well. To the degree that banks and credit unions increase their reliance on closed network payment systems for sending remittance transfer and other cross-border money transfers, the Bureau notes that this could result in greater standardization and ease by which sending institutions could know exact covered third-party fees and exchange rates. The Bureau also believes that expanded adoption of Swift's GPI product or Ripple's suite of products could similarly allow banks and credit unions to know the exact final amount that recipients of remittance transfers will receive before they are sent. Again, the mention of Ripple and no other digital assets company that claims to be in the payment space is mentioned here from the federal government. Okay, very, very important to note. So where else? So I wanted to cover this for you guys. Remember, this is executive order again. This came out of May. And remember, the initial thing from the CFPB came out in May. Okay, so the CFPB came out in May with their article mentioning Ripple, and I believe it was before this executive order. In fact, I'm pretty certain that it was. But it's very, very important to note this executive order on regulatory relief to support economic recovery. Very, very important. So I'm not going to read through all of this. This is dated May 19th. This is from the whitehouse.gov, right? And so he signed an executive order to, right? So, you know, the beer cold happened and it's causing so much financial and economic harm to not only us, but other places as well, right? So he signed an executive order that is going to allow for the country to recover, right? And so I'm going to read this because this is important here. By the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. It is the policy of the United States to combat the economic consequences of the beer code with the same vigor and resourcefulness with which the fight against the beer code itself has been waged. Agencies, remember this, agencies should address this economic emergency. Agencies should address this economic emergency by rescinding, modifying, waiving, or providing exemption from regulations and other requirements that may inhibit economic recovery. Agencies, right? So let's go take a look at what the definition of agency is. Now, here he says, here's some definitions. Emergency authorities means any statutory or regulatory authority or exceptions that authorize action in an emergency. In an emergency, comma, in exigent circumstances, comma, for good cause, or in similar situations. Okay, now here's another definition for agency. Agency has the meaning given in section 3502 of Title 44 of the United States Code. Well, let's look and see what the law office or the law firm from Cornell Law says about that. So the term agencies means any executive department, military department, government corporation, government controlled corp, or other establishment in the executive branch of the government, including the executive office of the president or any independent regulatory agency. So we're going to cover those. We're not going to cover the ones that it does not. So let's go over or any independent regulatory agency, because it's important to note and important to remember these particular places, given, you know, what just recently happened. Okay, so with the CFPB and also the OCC and also the SEC, right? So the term independent regulatory agency means the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, the CFTC, Commodities Futures Trading Commission, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the Federal Communications Commission, Federal Deposit Insurance Corp, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, the Federal Maritime, the Federal Trade, the Interstate Commerce, the Mine Enforcement Safety. Okay, I'm not going to read all of those. Let's get to the most important ones. All right, the Postal Regulatory Commission, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection, and most applicably to us, the SEC, the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. Given Mr. Brooks leaving Coinbase and going over to the OCC and the things that he's looking to phase in as, as being the overseer of the banks, if you will, is important. This particular article or document coming out from the CFPB is important. The amendment, the original one in May, the amendment now in June, now it will come in effect in July, right? And then you throw in the SEC and, Clayton, who, some could argue, either way, he's I'm not sure if he's so crypto friendly or he wants to be extremely cautious, but in any case, he hasn't moved forward in a way that we would like him to move. And also, this was pointed out quite frankly, from Chris Larsen, who said the SEC made a mistake in giving clarity on Bitcoin and Ethereum, but not giving it on other digital assets that could support innovation for U.S. companies. And then lo and behold, SEC dude, Mr. Clayton, is moving on to another position. Right? And so again, the important thing to note is this executive order is going to allow for the CFPB, the SEC, and the OCC to rescind, modify, waive, or provide exemption from regulations and other requirements that may inhibit economic recovery. So that's, for me, that's the green light for me and my tinfoil hat. It's the green light for the current administration to move forward in the direction that they want to move forward. And when you got the CFPB mentioning Ripple and XRP, you got Brian Brooks coming from the digital space and being very digital, crypto friendly, moving into the head of the OCC. You got the SEC guy who, by default, gave a disadvantage to the U.S. companies and gave it an advantage to China because he gave clarity on Bitcoin and ETH, and they control the vast majority of the mining going over there. Right? You got him out the door and opened the door for someone like Hester Pierce, who they call Crypto Mom. And you got Mnuchin, okay, who is essentially, kind of absorbed, if you will, the Fed, right, the Department of Treasury, having big time connections with Brian Brooks back in the day from banking. So it feels like the pieces are in place for the current administration to move forward in the direction that they want to go. And you can't disregard comments about the digital asset and a virtual currency from one agency. You can't disregard the comments, the videos from Brian Brooks being heavily crypto friendly. Can't just disregard that and say that, oh, it doesn't really mean anything. You got the CFPB coming out with an amendment. What do you think that amendment's about? It's about giving more regulation, more wiggle room to move forward. Everyone recognizes this is a new revelation. This is the fourth industrial revolution. The internet of value is a real thing. And don't forget the first executive order that the president of the United States signed. Executive Order 13772. Again, guess which company was mentioned there? Google Executive Order 13772, and you'll see Ripple mentioned there from the Donald. Economic emergency. The biggest liquidity asset on the planet today is XRP. There's a plan, guys. I truly believe it's a plan. This current executive order opens the door for these agencies like the CFPB, the OCC, and the SEC to move forward with their plan. And I'll say, if I said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. There is no way, in my humble opinion, that a good old US of A company like Ripple and the software and the services, the technology that it has, is gonna be used by Japan and Mr. Yoshitaka Kitao. It's going to be used by Saudi Arabia. It's going to be used by all these other banks and FIs in other countries. To help provide, by the way, what they're providing is velocity of money. And where we had in the US have zero velocity of money. So you're going to tell me that we're going to just let these other companies use this technology to add value to the people and citizens of their nation, of those countries, and we're not a good old US of A company? We're just going to let that we're not going to take advantage of that technology? We're not going to take advantage of that. A good old USFA company that from day one has separated itself from the stigma of going around the banks and going around government and not working with government, has separated itself from that stigma and has constantly espoused how they are working with central banks and governments, working with, in tandem and alongside of. You don't think those sentiments will be echoed from this current administration? They're going to just let this technology just, yeah, we'll just do our own thing and we'll try to come up with our own thing? When there's a good old USFA fintech company that has been doing it for close to 7 years now, if not longer than 7 years, and has the best of the best? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. So I think this executive order, again, this came out May 19th that the Donald put together, right? The President of the United States put together, is more and more applicable. And I believe it'll be more apropos to talk about it in the coming months. We'll see what happens July 21st. This is all lining up, in my humble opinion, for the current bull market that's about to happen in late July, early August. Interestingly enough. All right, guys, listen, I'm going to wrap up this video like I do all of my videos and remind you guys of this. Old money doesn't want you to win. They don't want us to win. They would rather us remain a cog in their perpetual wheel of trading our time for dollars. They don't want us to play in the same playground that they play in, where we allow our money to work for us. This is our chance to win, guys. The digital asset space is our chance to win. We are in the midst of the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of man. Are you participating? Or are you standing on the sidelines? Here's what I do know, that the battle for you has already been fought, and the victory is yours. Go get it. I'll talk to you soon, guys. See ya.